It was past midnight when Ananya's car broke down on a deserted road, the moon casting eerie shadows around her. Her phone had no signal, leaving her feeling isolated and anxious in the stillness of the night. The only sign of life was a dim light coming from the old motel, beckoning her with a sense of uncertain hope. The sign outside read, "Rooms available, check in anytime," offering a strange comfort in her moment of distress. With a deep breath, she gathered her courage and started walking towards the motel, each step echoing in the silence. As she reached the entrance, the creaking door of the motel swung open slightly, revealing a shadowy figure inside. "Welcome," the figure said, their voice raspy and low, sending a chill down Ananya's spine. Ananya stepped inside, her heart pounding as she scanned the dimly lit room for any signs of warmth or safety. "Do you need a room?" the figure asked, their face still hidden in the shadows, heightening her unease. For a moment, Ananya hesitated, weighing her fear against the necessity of shelter from the cold night. Finally, she nodded, deciding that a room was better than remaining in the dark alone outside. A man appeared, tall, pale, with eyes that never seemed to blink. Without asking her name, he slid a brass key across the counter. "Room 6, end of the hall. Don't open the curtains." The carpeted hallway smelled faintly of damp earth. As Ananya passed room 3, she heard faint scratching coming from inside, followed by a whisper, "Don't stay here." Ananya paused, her heart racing with uncertainty. She glanced back at the reception desk, but the man had vanished. Taking a deep breath, she inserted the brass key into the lock, feeling an inexplicable chill run down her spine. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit room with heavy curtains drawn tight. Inside, the air felt thick and stagnant, as if the room had been undisturbed for ages. Ananya glanced around, noticing the peculiar shapes of furniture draped in dust. Despite the darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, an unsettling presence lurking just beyond her sight. Remembering the warning, she hesitated before moving closer to the curtains. Ananya froze. In the mirror's reflection, a shadow stood right behind her. Tall, faceless, and moving closer, though the room itself was empty. She spun around. Nothing. The phone rang again. This time the voice was trembling. "Don't touch the glass. If you do, you'll never leave this place." The shadow's fingers pressed against the inside of the mirror, leaving black smudges across the glass. And then, a knock on the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. A man's voice called out, "Room service!" But she hadn't ordered anything. Ananya's instinct screamed at her to run. Yet her feet felt glued to the floor as the shadows grew darker around her. She could feel the darkness pressing in its chilling grasp, tightening around her as uncertainty clouded her thoughts. With a mix of fear and resolve, Ananya prepared to confront whatever was waiting beyond that door. She turned the knob slowly, every creak echoing like a warning, as her heart raced with the knowledge that crossing this threshold might change everything. As the door swung open, Ananya felt a chill run down her spine, the air thick with anticipation and dread. The clock on the wall struck 1200. At the first chime, the lights flickered. At the second, the mirror cracked. By the third, Ananya realized she wasn't alone in room 6 anymore. Figures began to emerge from the walls, pale guests in torn clothing, eyes, black mouths stitched shut. Their heads jerked at odd angles as they surrounded her. The phone rang again. She hesitated, then answered. The voice was barely audible but urgent, run to the lobby. "Don't stop. Don't look back!" Clutching the brass key, she bolted into the hallway. The carpet squelched under her feet as if soaked in water or blood. But the receptionist was already there waiting. Doors burst open as more figures stumbled out, their whispers blending together. "Stay, stay, forever." At the end of the hall, the dim glow of the lobby sign pulsed like a heartbeat. And this time his eyes were bleeding black. "Do you want me to make part 9, the lobby where she learns the motel's real purpose?" And the truth about Ananya's hands trembled as she picked up the photograph. The picture showed her standing near the mirror. But in the reflection, the faceless shadow was no longer behind her. It was standing beside her. She dropped the photo. The receptionist's smile widened unnaturally, stretching too far across his pale face. "You shouldn't have answered the phone," he whispered. The rotary phone rang again, shrill and echoing. Against her will, Ananya lifted the receiver. This time the voice was her own. It spoke from the other end. "Leave now before midnight. "If you stay, you'll take my place." The line went dead. The photo on the tray began to bleed the ink, melting into red streaks. And then every door in the hallway slammed shut at once. Ananya felt a surge of panic as the last door thudded shut, trapping her in an unthinkable situation. Her heart raced as she glanced at the photograph, now marred by dark crimson streaks, feeling as though it was both alive and threatening her existence. The air around her thickened, filled with an oppressive silence that drowned out the remnants of the ringing phone, leaving only the echoes of her own racing thoughts. "What does it mean?" she whispered to herself desperately, trying to understand the warning that had been delivered in her own voice. As the clock ticked ominously toward midnight, Ananya knew the stakes were more than just a photograph. The knocks grew louder. Thud! 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 Ananya's breath caught in her throat. She stayed silent, hoping whoever or whatever was outside would leave. But the voice returned softer now, almost playful. "Room service. You forgot to check in properly." The brass key on the nightstand rattled on its own, spinning in circles. The mirror's shadow pressed harder against the glass, its faceless head tilting toward the door. Finally, the door creaked open on its own. The pale receptionist stood there holding a silver tray. On it was a covered dish. He smiled, though his eyes still didn't blink. "For you," he said. When he lifted the lid, there was no food inside. Instead, it was a photograph of Ananya standing inside room 6, taken just minutes ago. Ananya burst into the lobby, gasping for air. The pale receptionist stood behind the counter, but now his smile was gone. His voice was hollow, echoing as if spoken from deep underground. "No one checks out, Miss Ananya. Room 6 chose you." The brass key in her hand began to burn, searing her skin. She dropped it onto the floor, but instead of clattering, it sank into the carpet like it was quicksand. Behind the counter, shelves of dusty keys rattled violently. Some were glowing faintly, others cracked as if broken. She realized each key belonged to someone who never left. The receptionist slid a large ledger across the counter. "Sign your name. It's tradition." The book was filled with thousands of names, each one crossed out in red. At the bottom of the page, the last entry caught her eye. Ananya, room 6. But she hadn't signed it. Her blood ran cold. From behind, the stitched-mouthed guests shuffled into the lobby surrounding her, their whispers now clear. "One of us." The receptionist leaned forward, eyes hollow voids now. "Every guest chooses," he said. "Stay and be forgotten. Or leave, but take someone else's place." The ledger slid toward her again. A rusty pen appeared in her hand, though she didn't remember picking it up. Her name was already written. The red ink dripped like blood. Ananya's heart pounded. She thought of her family, her friends, anyone outside this cursed motel. If she signed, she would remain here a shadow among the others. If she refused, the motel would find someone else. The phone on the counter rang one last time. She picked it up. Her own voice whispered through the line. "You can't escape. You can only trade." The guests pressed closer. The mirror behind the counter showed her reflection, but this time it wasn't her face. It was the faceless shadow, smiling. Ananya screamed, and the lights went out. When they flickered back on room 6 was clean and empty. The brass key rested